God, welcome to 4th and Lynn. It's been a long time, I know that, but as I said, it's time for a vid now. Today we'll be talking about the NCAA. As you all know, the NCAA tournament is upcoming. So today we'll be breaking down how the NCAA tournament will look like, who I think will get in, and who I think will be the top 4 seeds. We'll also be talking about the bubble teams on the NCAA tournament that might go in or might not. We'll see. To start, the top 4 teams. The NCAA tournament every year. Now, being number 1 seed is not always good. As you can see the past couple of years, with the exception of Kentucky last year, have all gotten out pretty quickly by the Sweet 16. Like, I remember, like, last 2 years ago, all 4 teams, all number 1, they got out by the Sweet 16. So, my prediction for the top 4 teams. Number 1, I think Indiana's going to get it. Like, Indiana's had a subpar year so far. Sure, they lost games, but they've lost to, like, Butler, Minnesota. They've lost to good teams, though. Like, Indiana hasn't had any bad losses, and they're playing fantastic right now. Even with the loss today to Minnesota, they're still going to get the number 1 seed. They have so much talent, and, like, Oladipo, Holes, Watford, and Zella that can carry them far. Indiana, I think, will get the number 1 seed. It will also come down to if I think it will come down between Indiana and Michigan. Who wins the Big Ten tournament? If Indiana wins, they get it. If Michigan wins, they get it because they're both right now in the top 4, and they both are good teams. Number 2 seed. The other number 1 seed. I think Gonzaga can get it. I mean, Gonzaga right now, you look at their schedule. Sure, the West Coast Conference is not that good, but look at St. Mary's is a good team. They just beat Creighton. I think Gonzaga, let's see the teams they beat. They beat a lot of Big 12 teams this year. Like, they beat half the Big 12. They beat Kansas State. They beat Oklahoma. They beat West Virginia. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat Baylor. I mean, Gonzaga's being half the Big 12. And the Big 12, while, like you say, West Virginia is not that great of a win. But the rest, Kansas State, Baylor, Oklahoma, besides the certain Kansas State, Baylor and Oklahoma are NCAA bubble teams, 20 hopeful teams. And you look at St. Mary's. St. Mary's is a great team. They're becoming such a great program. Like, just look at the past couple of years, like a Sweet 16 trip, an NIT trip. And, like, they won the conference title last year. But Gonzaga's playing some fantastic basketball, and I think if they win the WCC tournament, number 1 seeds is theirs. The other number 1. I think between Duke and Miami, I think it's going to come down to who also wins the ACC tournament, because both teams have been playing each other solidly equal. Sure, Miami just blew Duke out at their home floor in Miami, but we'll see. But I don't think Miami will win at Duke. Like, Duke is a hard place to play. Like, Cameron Crazy are tremendous, and Duke, you know, they just had their bad game, but Duke and Miami, they're both talented teams. But I think you give it to Duke, because I think I give Duke the number 1 seed too over Miami, because I just think Duke can outlast Miami in an ACC battle. Now the other number 1 seed, the 4th and final number 1 seed, that's gonna be tough. But I think you give it to Kansas. Now Kansas, they had that slip where they got upset by TCU at TCU for TCU's only Big 12 win, but you can't win every game. I mean, sometimes you just come out flat and all that stuff, but I think Kansas, despite what happened, they've shown tremendous plays this year. They've rebounded nicely. Now they're on a roll. They're tied for Big 12 with Kansas. They beat Iowa State in a thrilling game. They're a team that, while they look inconsistent, Elijah Johnson, Charles Rutherford, Ben McLemore, Jeff Wade, they can put up a lot of points, especially Elijah Johnson. I think Kansas will win the Big 12 tournament because the Big 12 this year is not that great. I mean, besides Kansas State. Iowa State's okay. Oklahoma State, they're solid too. But, like, looking at the bottom half, like TCU, West Virginia, Texas Tech, they're not very good. And you've got an okay Baylor team, but it's just not a very good Big 12 this year. I think, now talking about the NCAA bowl teams, who do I think will get in? You know, Kentucky, based on their past success and based on the fact that they were NCAA champions last year, I think they'll get in. I mean, this team, sure they don't have nerves, but they're a really talented team. They have a loaded recruiting class as always. Alex Prothes, Archie Goodwin, Willie Cauley-Stein, and like they got transfers like Julius Mays and Ryan Harrow. Sure, this is not the same team we've used to see. This is not the same Kentucky team we used to see. It's because these freshmen have not been as good as the previous freshmen. But I think Kentucky still will get into the NCAA tournament because of the fact they were NCAA champions last year, and I can still see them being a dangerous team. Any Calipari coach team is dangerous. Now, another bubble team we're talking about is, let's say, like St. John's, St. John's is like, they've had some iffy losses to like San Francisco and Asheville, but in the Big East, they picked up some quality wins. St. John's has picked up some quality wins. I know most people don't consider St. John's a long shot at the NCAA tournament, but I think they do, just because you're in the Big East. It's easy to get quality wins, and they've beaten some good teams. They beat Notre Dame, Cincinnati, which I think is so solid, and UConn. Provided they can beat Notre Dame or Marquette, I think they can make the run for it. I mean, that's the team that if they make the tournament 20, they're dangerous, because St. John's, based on past success, have been pretty good. Now, Iowa State, Iowa State's kind of like Kansas somewhat. They're a team that can shoot the ball real well. Don't always play well defense, but I think they can squeak in because Iowa State is a potentially dangerous team because they can just light it up from downtown, and they have the guards to do it in Corey Lucius, Will Clyburn, and Tyrus McGee. I think Iowa State has the talent to get into the NCAA tournament. Now, another team that people are wondering if Creighton will get in, I think Creighton will get in because Creighton, they've lost games. I mean, actually think about it. The Missouri Valley Conference is actually a pretty good conference. We got Creighton, Wichita State. Northern Iowa's okay. Indiana State's okay. I think Indiana State beat Miami, so I think Creighton can get in just because they started the season well. They have a solid schedule. Sure, they're slipping, but there's lots of St. Mary's hurts, but I still think they can get in. And now, St. Mary's, even if they lose the West Coast Conference playoffs to Gonzaga, I think they still get in just due to the fact that they beat Creighton, and so the record is pretty good. I mean, their non-conference schedule is soft, but they beat BYU twice and beat Creighton. I think that's enough to get them in. Now, one league that I think people are overlooking, two leagues I think people are overlooking are the Atlantic 10. The Atlantic 10 and the Atlantic 10 and the Mountain West. The Mountain West got some solid teams like New Mexico, Colorado State, UNLV, San Diego State. Those four teams were all ranked at some point in the year. They've all got talented players, and I think all four will make the NCAA 20 just because the Mountain West is a tough league. Then you got the likes of Boise State, who's beating Creighton, and the Mountain West, you can pick up quality wins either. Who's beating Creighton, they've beaten UNLV too, but the non-conference schedule besides Creighton, they took Michigan State down to the wire. They beat LSU, which is not that quality of a win, but it's still an SEC team. But I look for Boise State. If they can make some damage in the Mountain West tournament, I think they can get this weekend too. Now, the Atlantic, you've got Butler, you've got St. Louis, a St. Louis team that's on fire right now. They just beat Butler, VCU. Sure, they started the year a little bit iffy, but they're picking it up right now. They lost to Temple on Rhode Island, but after that, they're on a roll right now. St. Louis, I think, will get in. And VCU, I think the Atlantic, you got teams like Butler, VCU. VCU's up and down, but I think by the fact that they're ranked twice, they will make it to the NCAA tournament. And you got a Temple team that beat Syracuse. Temple's been iffy the past couple. They've gone up and down so far, but I think Temple gets in. The N10 should be able to get 4 teams in. And maybe a Xavier team who's struggled due to the fact they lost two Holloway, Mark Leon's transfer, Des Wills went to Maryland. But Xavier, they beat Memphis, so you never know. The Atlantic 10 is an interesting league. The SEC has been disappointing this year. Besides Florida, no other team. Missouri's been awful on the road. So has Kentucky. They've just been awful on the road. Ole Miss, after a good start, have went up and down with the losses too. With some bad losses this year. But Ole Miss, I don't know. I thought they would make it, but no. Alabama lost to Tulane and Mercer in the preseason, but the record is good. But I think the SEC, I think they will get 4 or 5 teams in. I think it'll be Florida, guaranteed, Kentucky, Missouri guaranteed, Kentucky, maybe. Kentucky will get in. Ole Miss will get in, I think, after so many NIT trips. And Alabama. Teams that the SEC is filled with poor talent this year. Think about it. Teams like Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Auburn. They've all been awful this year. Texas A&M has not been good either. It's just been awful. It's just been a poor year for the SEC. Georgia, LSU's been not so good either. So yeah. Well, that's it for this edition of the NCAA. I'll be back later to update when the tournament comes out. See you guys later. Okay, then.